Ever wondered what life was like for the first Australians thousands of years ago? All around us, right across this country, there are windows to the deep past. You just need to know where to look.
Here in Minyare, Broome, Western Australia, along this coast, there's a type of dinosaur footprint that connects us to a creator being named Morella, the emu man.
Our ancestors lived amongst glaciers in the middle of the Ice Age. In the Ice Age, they would have journeyed from Lutruida and walked on the land bridge through to the mainland.
My people have been sharing this land with the giant megafauna for thousands of years.
The Dreamtime story of our rainbow serpent, the Gabalamunda, who came into this area a long time ago and created everything before us. So when she shed her skin, all her scales went into the water and created the barrier reef to protect her babies.
This is like our 50,000-year-old university. The rock art here shows how the plants and animals have changed over time, from when Mordriga was an inland desert range to how it is today.
This is our nation's epic story. This is our country's truth. A history as rich as it is diverse. This is Deep Time. Hello and welcome to Deep Time, an ABC News special that explores the rich and diverse history of Australia's First Peoples. I'm Bridget Brennan, coming to you from the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation in Melbourne in Naarm. I'm joined in the studio today by a panel of experts and knowledge holders who reveal some of the origin stories of First Nations peoples. Jacinta Kulmatri is an Anyamatna and Ngarrindjeri archaeologist whose work is focused on rock art and loves to share this history with Australians. Dr Wayne Atkinson is a senior Yorta Yorta and Dja Dja Wurrung elder, an historian and the author of the new book, Beyond the Meeting of the Waters, a Yorta Yorta life story. And Salua Middleton is a Torres Strait Islander woman with family connections to Ereb and the co-executive producer of the ABC's Deep Time project. Welcome to all of you and thank you for being here. It's a wonderful, wonderful occasion to share this incredible project. Salua, tell us, what is Deep Time?
So Deep Time is a project that we've embarked on here at the ABC that looks at the deep history of this country, of its First Peoples, of its Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, going back 65,000 years plus. And so, yeah, we've created this digital online site within our news site for people to explore and learn more about the country that they live in.
The Deep Time website is now live and you can scan the QR code on screen or head to abc.net.au/deeptime. You can begin your journey through tens of thousands of years of history. What about just the concept of Deep Time? What does it mean?
Yeah, look, I think this project was really about showing that these stories that go back 65,000 years, you know, it's a time that a lot of people can't understand, 65,000 years, and we've tried to put it in a way where people can make that connection and understand. And so this project is about showing that long, continuous culture that's, you know, in this country with its First Nations peoples. And it's also about showing that it's like continuous, alive. It's ancient, but it's not extinct.
Uncle Wayne, tell us about the strength of being part of this story gives you as a senior elder. You write about it as the eternal dreaming.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I think it's rather an honour, you know, to be invited to be part of this amazing program. For me as a senior elder now, you know, having time to look back at our history and culture and amazing stories, of course, that unfold is a great opportunity to share that with the audience out there. And we've got some great stories to tell.
Oh, it's a real honour to have you all here. Jacinta, how do we understand Deep Time? How do we understand the stories that tell us about it alongside some of the work that's been done in more recent years?
Yeah, I guess Well, deep time itself has deep and geological origin is the word. So it in a way, it's the perfect kind of word to explain the length of time that we have spent here on this land. Because you look at different cultures, other societies around the world, ancient Greece or Egypt, and you know, those are only a couple thousand years ago. Vikings, that's a couple hundred years ago. But no one can really conceptualise the time that we've spent here 60,000 years ago.
It's an epic story, isn't it?
Yes.
It really is. And it is hard for people to conceptualise, which is why this project is so illustrative of all of the stories across the nation. And many of those stories shared as part of the Deep Time project are unique, but as you explore the site, you'll notice some common themes, such as stories that document the changing landscape. In beautiful southwest Victoria is a place called Budgebim, a World Heritage listed site named after the volcano which erupted more than 30,000 years ago. The Gunditjmara people believe it created the mountains, landscapes and animals on their country.
We're on Budgebim, which is part of our creation story, which is part of the four brothers that walked across this country as part of the ceremony. And they were creative beings that were half man, half beast. And part of that ceremony was to create the landscape, but also talk to the people and the plants, the animals and everything else. And when part of their story, the ceremony was to lay themselves out into the landscape.
Budgebim means big head, and if you're out in the flat country around Budgebim, you'll notice that it does look like a fairly large head sticking up. The story begins with the eruption of Budgebim, the volcano, back in around about 37,000 years ago. The story also talks about the scoria that come out of it, and the lava was about this being revealing its teeth.
All the lava that you do see is all of his blood and all of his teeth that followed the landscape right out to the ocean. So it's 50 kilometres out to the ocean, and he changed the whole landscape to what it is today. So there's hidden Easter eggs, I like to call them, on part of the country that tell that story as well. And you've got this sort of place here that's an oral history that's been passed down from generations and generations until 2025.
I think that it's always important to understand that people were around 30,000+ years ago. So we have traditional knowledge, we have historical records, we have the scientific data to put the story back together again.
Jacinta, what do the dreaming stories tell us about changes over time to the landscape and to the climate?
Well, you have to think about it, the fact that we are masters of this land. We've lived here for 60,000 years. And, you know, a lot of people also say we've lived here forever. So we're very observant, able to see what is going on with the land. And so it only makes sense that we recorded these stories through the stories that we would tell each other as we pass it down. We're able to learn so much from these stories. You know, we went through an ice age and we're able to see the sea levels rising, the volcanic eruptions that were happening. We literally saw these things happening, and they were so impactful to our lives that it only makes sense that we passed it down. But these stories also tell us about how to live on this land, how we relate to each other, our social structures. They essentially formed how to respect each other and the land, because we ourselves don't see each other separate from the land. We're one with the land. And so our stories tell us how to essentially be here.
Uncle Wayne, the Yorta Yorta have dreaming stories that tell us so much about the changes to the landscape and to the climate as well.
The Yorta Yorta have a very rich heritage of sites dating back to 60,000 years, coming forward to the Cadell Fault that took place, that created the Great Flood. So this is an amazing story. I had the pleasure of recording when I became involved in recording the oral history, given our people still have a very rich oral history, and that is still one of the key ways that knowledge is transmitted and passed on, as it has been in the past for so long. So the Indepth Fault is an event, a geological event that took place 30,000 years ago. There was a major uplift in the land, and these things were happening all over the world, of course, and in these tectonic shifts in the land, in the structure of the land. So there was a big lift in the land between Echuca and Deniliquin. And so it was about 12 metres lift. And you can still see the escarpment now when you travel along that stretch of country. So that created a huge barrier for the major rivers that were flowing from the east to the west, and particularly the Murray River. And so over time there was a huge backup of water. They decided, well, we have to sort of do something about this. And so the story goes that, they walked down to the point where the water was backed up on the huge sand ridge that bordered the forest. And so with their digging sticks, they dug this path through the sand ridge, and that released the water. And then it flowed through there and created the, connected with the other part of the Murray River system. But I think that sort of highlights that the Yorta Yorta people were essentially a river-based people. And that's how the story goes and is recorded, of course.
Silua, as we heard, these stories are not static. They're living, they're breathing, they're passed on. They're very much alive, aren't they?
They are. I think one of the things I've learned through the project and working with knowledge holders is that their library isn't in the books or on that bookshelf. It's in the sky, it's in the earth, it's on in art, captured in art and through oral history as well. And so, that succession of passing down that knowledge is something that all of those knowledge holders I've spoken to are very proud of, and it plays that continued role today as well.
And captured so beautifully in the Deep Time project. Well, Murujuga is home to one of the largest and most diverse collections of rock art on Earth. The World Heritage listed site demonstrates the traditional custodians' continuous connection to country that spans more than 50,000 years.
So where we are today, we're at a place called Nganjali. In my language, it means sacred place or gathering area. And what this pretty much is, or the whole Barrup, is pretty much a big university for Indigenous people. So a lot of their law and traditions are carved here into the rocks. And we have visiting language groups that come here to practice these laws and to learn. So when other visiting language groups come into the area, they would burn a fire outside just outside there, where the first rocky outcrop is. Then traditional owners of this area would come out and bring them in, because you just can't walk into anyone's country without permission. So this here is called a shell mitten scatter. This is a pretty big indicator for us, telling us that it wasn't just men or women here, it was a gathering ground for everyone. So pretty much what they've done, they've just brought the shells back from the ocean in a wooden bowl or a yandy, cooked them over a fire, cracked them open, eaten the meat, and then they've just tossed the shells. This is pretty much nature's rubbish bin. That's all it is. But these have been spotted all over the Barrup and inland as well. So they're not just here, but they're all around Australia.
Rock art is something that universities use, for example, as, they call them archives and history stuff. Some of them are digital, some of them go back for generations, hundreds of years. This goes back thousands of years. And that's the same impact as it did thousands of years ago.
It's similar to like how we've got the internet and Google and social media and books, all of those different things, paintings. It's like that all rolled into one. So the term art is just way too broad. It's all the accumulated knowledge from over 60,000 years that my people have put down on these stones.
Just into the fact that some of those engravings depict long extinct megafauna there at Murujuga is just extraordinary. But you also grew up hearing stories of giant animals from your grandma.
Yes, yes. You know, giant animals are one of those things that all Aboriginal people, I think, have heard about. We know that these animals were always big. And Murujuga is an amazing place where you can see all these stories, and other places have recorded megafauna in rock art, and there's always been, little discussions. But we, in my community, we have a big animal called a yamati, and this animal was always a very scary thing for us to hear about. To this day, still gives me a bit of shivers to talk about it. To the little kids in my family, still very scared of this animal. And we always just knew we were told, because technically this animal would come and steal kids, so that's why we were so scared of it.
So you weren't allowed to be too naughty, or
No, and especially at night time, you know, no wandering off from the place. Otherwise, we'll get taken. So this we were always told if he does grab us, and we're on his back, we need to climb up to a tree, or if we are running away from him, just run up and climb up into a tree. Because one of the things we were always told is that the yamati couldn't look up. But over the years, I've been told by paleontologists that the diprotodon is actually one of the animals where he actually can't, they know that based on his bone structure, he can't actually look up. So there's quite a clear link that this animal that we were told about for so long is probably a diprotodon.
Absolutely fascinating. A 40,000-year-old bedtime story. Salua, tell us, do animals regularly form a part of these deep time stories?
Yeah, like we've got loads of animal stories actually, and it could be from, you know, something around like fish traps and people looking at animals as a source of food, but then it could also be something like, you know, the emu in the sky is a story that actually has come up quite a few times in the project from different knowledge holders across the country who tell a similar story about, you know, being able to read this emu in the sky to understand when it's the right time to hunt, you know, to collect eggs. And but then there's also other stories of like building relationship or having a relationship with a physical animal, like on the Gold Coast of where I'm based. There's a story from the Combermary mob there about building a relationship with the dolphins, and they would tap on the water, and that would, you know, bring in the dolphins. That would help round up all the mullet and fish into the shallow so that they were ready to spear. And there's a similar story in Yuin as well, in Yuin country too, with orcas and dolphins, where they would, stamp their feet, I think, and round up fish as well.
Uncle Wayne, you've written that once you see the evidence on country, you can start to appreciate the land's long history. How has it strengthened your identity, being on country and investigating all of the evidence that is alongside the Murray and also on country?
You know, this is what we call Gupta Nyawal, meaning deep listening, deep thinking, going back into the land. And it was something, you know, that sort of just really absorbs you totally. And you want to find out more and more. And, you know, the work we did with my cousin when we were doing a lot of survey work we came up with this name. We called ourselves like the Dirt Scratchers because we were continually down on our knees scratching. And, you know, my cousin had incredible eyesight and he could, once we got down, you can find all these micro
That's my dad you're talking about, isn't it?
That is your father.
Yeah. So it was.
And, so, you know, was a wonderful experience, and that it took us deeper and deeper into, you know, the sites, the distribution of sites, the evidence, and identifying the evidence and collecting it and recording sites. And so from there, we now have a very, very rich cultural heritage program, you know, that is now run at the Dania Centre as a living learning centre. And this is where we can now build bridges with the universities and other education places to bring people on country so that they can learn more from Yorta people about this amazing history, including the oral history and how it correlates. Very rich, this is.
It sure is. It's incredibly rich, and across the continent for thousands of years, people connected through trade routes, songlines and ceremonial gatherings. On the shores of Gamay in Sydney, the Dharawal people cared for the land and water and lived within a sophisticated system with other cultural groups.
We lived a fully sustainable life here on the shores of Gamay. Our people, they were quite territorial. We had to be able to communicate with one another. If we were to travel long distances, we would be asking neighbours along the way to help us or use non-verbal way of communicating. The Endeavour sailed up the east coast. Along the way, our people knew that something strange was coming. The Endeavour observed smoke signals, but our old people talked about message sticks being brought up from our relatives from the south coast that told us that this strange object was coming. Our old people, from the stories they tell us, they were trying to interpret it through their own spiritual lens. You know, is this another baranga of animals coming? You know, when they saw the sailors going up the mast, they thought, are these garura or possums climbing up the trees on this island? Are they spirits of our ancestors returning from the east? They actually realised that they were in human form, but they looked white. And our old people, when they met them, were yelling out "Warra Warra Warra," which they interpreted to go away. So the two warriors that met the Endeavour were communicating to the family, the Guigal clan on that side of Gamay, that these ghosts, these gunjas were all dead and they were returning. They were reaching back into their deep time and trying to interpret that event. Aboriginal people, we're the oldest living culture in the world, and that means something to us. That's a badge of honour for our people. But it should be celebrated too by everybody that's here in Australia. We can take our culture back to when time began. When we reflect on our dreaming stories and those old stories that happened many, many thousands of years ago, and that's something to be proud of.
Jacinta, what should people take away from learning about stories like this one?
We are the first people who are here. We developed all these ways of communicating with each other over time that worked to a T, you know. And I'm thinking about what you're saying about deep listening. That's such an important word because that's something that isn't really shown in Western society. There isn't this idea that you need to deeply listen. Mm-hmm. A lot of it's very centred on the individual, not about the community and caring. And so, you know, if you're thinking about that communication between different communities, different language groups, people who didn't even speak the same language, but did develop languages where we were able to communicate with each other. Deep listening enabled us to do that. And even the fact that people knew that what they were seeing wasn't actually something they knew it to be something that was going to probably dramatically change our lives forever. Just recognising, that we were the first people here. I think people really take for granted how long our history is here. There's nowhere else in the world that knows these stories that have gone on for literally tens of thousands of years. There literally isn't places that has that knowledge, and people should be proud and privileged to be on this land, because it means we've cared for this land for that long, and we've mastered and learnt. We're the experts of this place.
Beautifully said, and we can't get away without mentioning that obviously colonisation was a cataclysmic event for all of our nations around the country, but it didn't interrupt the strength, did it? It hasn't disrupted the evidence and the stories and the oral history that we still have.
No, I think it's because one of the things that we all hold deeply, whether we can't speak our language anymore, whether we can't tell every part of a story, is that we have these principles embedded into us about respect for one another, respect for the land, and deep listening. So it's great that you brought deep listening up, because it is so key to who we are. A lot of the time I do take a step back, and people, whenever I'm doing something and people don't really kind of think, oh, she's just quiet, but it's actually that I'm listening and respecting everybody else. And I think that's a value that a lot of Aboriginal people have, and a lot of people don't really realise that's how we operate. And I think it's the one thing that's pushed through colonisation, whether you hold what is typically viewed as traditional Aboriginal culture.
Uncle Wayne.
I like the way you've taken that and run with it.
Yeah. Tell us again the word in language. Tell us again.
Gupnanyawal.
Gupnanyawal.
Yeah. In the Uriot language.
Do you have that deep listening sense when you're out on country? What do you reflect on now when you're there?
I use it when I'm teaching on country, and I get students and we do a teaching in the circle. And then when we get to the point where, okay, now it's time to really start to think about this. This is about our identity. This is about our connections to country. And so this is also important for our identity, to ground our identity and who we are. And so that's time now for deep listening. Listen to these stories, they're important. Take note, and that's the meaning of Gupnanyawal. And it is very strong. It's a concept that works very well within the learning circle.
Yeah. And Salura, is there one thing that stayed with you from this project, which we should say is one of the most ambitious and epic projects the ABC's ever undertaken?
Look, I think it was, there's a few things. I think one of the things that's really stayed with me is just the connections between stories and communities. And there was one story, like early on in the project, I was looking at a story, I was doing a story around the Bunya Mountains, and a lot of people would travel from different parts of Australia to head to the Bunya Mountains for a gathering. And then I had another story there, which was one I hadn't done, but another one of our researchers had done. And I was like, why are these stories almost the same? I'm just going to merge them, until I stopped and went, actually, these are two different knowledge holders from two different areas that are talking to the same thing. And one was talking about how they used the night sky to make their way to the Bunyas, going, okay, people would travel here to the Bunyas. So it was like this, almost the same story, but actually, it was this area that different groups have the same stories that overlap. And it was really lovely to highlight that connection. So I think that's one of the biggest things that, mob is connected, and I think, most of us already know that anyway, but, mob is connected, and for a long time, and that was just a really lovely example of that.
That's all we have time for. A big thank you to our panel today, Salua Middleton, Dr. Wayne Atkinson and Jacinta Kulmatri. There's so much more to explore on the Deep Time website. Head to abc.net.au/deeptime or scan the QR code on your screen now to begin your journey through tens of thousands of years of history. Happy travels.